Right. So today we're going depth on one of the, I guess you could say, most talked about figures in recent times.
Yeah.
Donald Trump.
For sure.
So we've got a whole bunch of different sources.
Yep.
Articles, research, all that stuff. Trying to get a handle on just what made this guy tick.
Yeah.
And we're going to come at it from all these different angles.
I like it.
Psychology, philosophy, even sociology and economics.
Wow.
By the end of this deep dive, you're going to have, I think, a much richer understanding.
I hope so.
Not just of Trump himself, but really his impact on, well, on everything.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? Even all these years after he's left office,
Right.
people are still, I don't know, analyzing him, debating him.
Oh, absolutely.
He's inescapable.
Yeah, so let's dive right in.
Right.
Let's start with, the psychology.
Okay.
The man himself.
Right.
I mean, one thing you see right away from all the clinical psychologists
Yeah.
is this kind of combination of charisma on the one hand, but then also, being so divisive.
Yeah.
They talk about this really strong need to dominate, almost like a craving for everyone to just constantly be validating him.
Oh, yeah.
And it really makes you wonder how that played out,
On the world stage.
Like
Yeah.
just on a global scale.
Fascinating.
Have you ever worked with leaders like that?
I think we all have at some point.
Yeah.
To a degree, right? Everyone wants to feel important.
Sure.
But with Trump, it was like turned up to 11.
Totally. And you can't talk about the psychology of Trump
Right.
without talking about narcissism.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, it comes up all the time in the research.
All the time.
And it's not hard to find examples of it, right? Like, do you remember that quote?
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, losers and haters.
Classic.
But my IQ is one of the highest, and you all know it.
It's so in your face, right? Like he wants people to be upset.
It's wild, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's almost like he's daring you to challenge him.
Oh.
But you know what I think is even more interesting?
What's that?
It really reveals what he's all about.
Oh, okay.
See, he doesn't just want to be successful. He needs everyone to see him as superior.
Like he needs that constant validation.
Yes, exactly.
And that probably affected everything he did in office.
I bet it did.
Like every decision.
And Dr. Bandy Lee, she's a psychiatrist at Yale,
Okay.
studied Trump quite a bit. She talks about how impulsive he is.
Impulsive, yeah.
And emotionally reactive.
Ah, okay.
Like, think about how he used Twitter
Oh, man.
all the time, right?
Yeah.
Bypassing the media, going straight to the public.
Right, to the source.
But often in a way that was
How would you put it?
unfiltered, I guess. Like raw.
Yeah, it definitely kept things interesting.
Right.
But it also raised questions
For sure.
about his judgment.
Definitely.
Like maybe acting before thinking things through.
Okay, so we've looked at the psychology, but let's switch gears for a minute. And think about Trump through like a philosophical lens.
Oh, interesting.
Do you think, did he even have a particular philosophy?
I mean, not in the traditional sense.
Oh, right.
Like not a system of beliefs or anything,
Right.
but I think you could call his worldview
Yeah.
deeply pragmatic.
Pragmatic.
But maybe even sometimes Machiavellian.
Interesting.
He once said, I love this quote, "Sometimes by losing a battle, you find a new way to win the war."
That's a good one.
Right. And it really sums up his approach to,
Yeah.
I don't know, deal-making life.
So for him, it was all about the end goal.
Exactly.
Whatever it took.
Whatever it took to get there.
Interesting.
And it actually ties into this whole philosophical idea, the will to power.
Okay.
Oh,
right.
famous philosopher.
Yeah.
He said it's this primal urge to dominate, to be on top.
To win.
And Nietzsche thought it was like a fundamental driving force in humans.
Wow. So it wasn't just about winning for the sake of winning?
Maybe not.
He wanted to shape things, like impose his vision on the world.
Could be.
Think about how he approached like international relations.
Oh, yeah.
Often it seemed like it was all about asserting American dominance, sometimes even at the cost of our relationships with allies.
Yeah, it's like he was trying to
I don't know.
force the world
Yeah.
to conform to his will.
Exactly.
And he wasn't afraid to use, I don't know, polarizing language to do it.
Oh, yeah.
Really driving a wedge between us and them.
Right. Which brings us to the sociological side of things.
Oh.
What were the broader social forces at play here that allowed someone like Trump to become so powerful?
Yeah, that's the big question.
Right. I mean, you can't talk about Trump without talking about populism.
Right.
He really tapped into that deep well of populist sentiment.
Especially among people who, I don't know, felt left behind.
By globalization, by all the changes that have been happening.
Yeah, the rapid change.
They felt, I don't know, unheard, forgotten.
Mm.
Like their concerns just didn't matter anymore.
Yeah, I can see that.
And that's where that slogan comes in, right?
Which one?
Make America Great Again.
Yes.
Brilliantly effective. I mean, from a sociological perspective.
Absolutely.
It played on this collective nostalgia,
Nostalgia? For what?
I think for a lot of people, it was this idea of a simpler time.
Okay.
More secure, maybe a time when things felt, at least in their memories, better.
Right, when America was quote-unquote great.
Exactly. And it really resonated with a lot of people who felt like...
Like what?
Like the American dream was slipping away.
That makes sense.
And there's this sociologist, Arlie Russell Hochschild.
Okay.
She wrote this book, Strangers in Their Own Land.
I've heard of that one.
And she argued that Trump was giving voice to these people.
To the forgotten.
Exactly. He was acknowledging their anxieties.
Okay.
Even if his solutions maybe weren't always...
realistic.
Yeah, or fully thought out.
But he at least saw them.
Exactly. And that's a powerful thing.
So he was channeling all that.
Yeah, all that resentment, that disillusionment.
And the political power.
And it turned out to be a very effective strategy.
It certainly did.
But let's not forget,
okay,
before he was a politician,
right,
he was a businessman.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So how much did that background shape his thinking on the economy?
It had to, right.
Yeah, I mean, remember during the campaign, he presented himself as this, like, master negotiator.
Oh, yeah, the deal maker.
The ultimate deal maker, right?
Yeah.
The guy who could fix a broken system.
Like, he was the only one.
Exactly. He'd say things like, I understand the system better than anyone else.
And that's why I alone can fix it.
Exactly. Wow, that's a powerful message.
Right. And it's very much the language of free market capitalism.
Okay.
Like someone who believes the government should just stay out of the way.
And let the market do its thing.
Yeah, and that was reflected in a lot of his policies, right?
Such as?
The tax cuts.
Deregulation. It was all about stimulating economic growth.
Okay.
And creating jobs, but mainly through the private sector.
So less government intervention.
Exactly.
But what about things like, the trade wars, the tariffs?
Those had some negative consequences.
Right, and that's something economists still debate today.
Yeah.
The long-term impact of all those policies.
It's a mixed bag.
Yeah, some say he made income inequality worse.
Right.
Others argue he boosted certain sectors of the economy.
Complicated.
Like most things in politics.
Very true.
But one thing's clear.
Yeah.
Trump's approach to economics was, like everything else, deeply transactional.
Transactional.
Yeah, it wasn't so much about ideology as it was about winning.
Like a game.
Exactly, about coming out on top in every deal.
He saw it all as, I guess you can say, like a zero-sum game.
Yeah, like for one person to win, someone else has to lose.
And it comes through in some of his most famous quotes. Like, the point is, you can never be too greedy.
Wow, that really sums up his whole philosophy, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's like this relentless pursuit of wealth.
Mm-hmm.
It was not only acceptable, but essential, like morally.
Like a moral imperative.
Exactly.
And it fed into this whole image he cultivated. This self-made billionaire.
Yeah.
The embodiment of the American dream.
Although there's been a lot of debate, right?
Oh, yeah.
About his actual wealth.
Sure.
And how savvy a businessman he actually was.
But in politics, perception is often more important than reality.
Very true.
And another quote that I think really gets at his mindset is, I don't like losers.
Ooh, that's a tough one.
Right. Kind of harsh.
It is.
But it reveals a lot about how he sees the world.
Yeah.
Strength, dominance, success.
Yeah.
Those are the only things that matter to him.
Like if you don't measure up,
you're out.
You're not worth his time.
Gone. Forgotten.
And that circles back to this whole will to power idea.
Right.
Like it really is a recurring theme.
Throughout his life.
And then, of course, there's that other quote, the one that caused so much controversy.
Oh, yeah.
When you're a star,
here we go.
They let you do it. You could do anything.
Yeah, that one.
It set off a firestorm.
Understandably so.
I mean, it almost sounded like he was condoning this sense of entitlement, of privilege.
Yeah, a lot of people found it disturbing.
Deeply disturbing.
For sure.
And for people who already saw him as dangerous, as a demagogue.
It just confirmed their worst fears.
Absolutely.
It's a complicated quote.
It is.
Because it raises questions about power, consent, accountability.
All these things that are so essential to a functioning society.
Exactly.
So looking back at all these different lenses.
Yeah.
Where does it leave us? What's the big takeaway here?
Well, I think the main thing is that Trump is this incredibly paradoxical figure.
Okay.
He's like the American dream.
Right.
But he also embodies so many of its flaws.
That's interesting.
He's this master of self-promotion, branding, all that.
Yeah.
But his actual accomplishments
Yeah.
often get lost in the controversy.
Right. Like the exaggeration.
And he appealed to the forgotten, to the unheard.
Yeah.
But his policies often ended up benefiting
The wealthy.
the powerful.
The very people he claimed to be fighting against.
It's a strange contradiction.
Isn't it?
He inspires incredible loyalty in some people
Right.
and intense animosity in others.
Exactly. Like, he defies easy categorization.
Absolutely.
So what does that mean?
It means we have to resist the urge
Mhm.
to oversimplify him.
To turn him into a caricature.
Yeah, or a soundbite.
Right. Because ultimately, I think he reflects something about us
About American society.
as a whole.
His rise to power exposed these, I don't know, these deep divisions that are still shaping our politics today.
And his legacy, I mean,
Oh, yeah.
is still being debated, analyzed.
Historians are going to be grappling with this for decades.
And why does all this matter?
That's the big question, right?
To our listeners, like, why should they care
Yeah.
about all these different perspectives on Trump?
Because understanding him
Yeah.
is key to understanding where we are now
As a country.
as a society.
Exactly. He didn't just come out of nowhere.
He did.
He tapped into anxieties, frustrations
grievances,
that were already there.
and they haven't gone away.
So even though he's not in office anymore,
Mm-hmm.
his influence is still very real.
Very much so.
You see it in the political landscape,
Yeah.
in the media.
Even just the way people talk about politics,
Yeah.
his ideas, his rhetoric, his style,
It still resonates.
a lot of people
And that's something we need to, I don't know,
engage with,
grapple with if we want to move forward.
to heal, to bridge those divides.
It's a reminder that we can't just dismiss him.
Or his supporters.
We have to try to understand where they're coming from,
Exactly.
what their concerns are.
That's the starting point.
Right. And it starts with being informed,
Absolutely.
looking beyond the surface.
Seeking out multiple perspectives.
And that's what we've tried to do today in this deep dive.
I think we've done a good job.
So before we move on,
Okay.
I want to leave you with something to think about.
All right.
We've talked a lot about the impact Trump's had on America.
On our society, our politics.
But what about the lasting influence he'll have on the world stage?
Oh, that's a good one.
How will his presidency be viewed by, I don't know.
Future generations.
Yeah, just something to ponder as you process all this information.
Lots to think about.
Yes.
And that's what makes this so fascinating.
Right.
It's a conversation that never really ends.
There's always more to learn, more to explore.
Keep those minds open.
Yes.
And those critical thinking skills sharp.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it really makes you think about what his legacy will be ultimately.
Yeah.
I mean, will history look back and see him as, as a shrewd businessman who just brought those deal-making skills to the White House? Or was he more of a, I don't know, a showman who just thrived on kind of disrupting things?
I mean, it's such a fascinating question, right?
It is.
Because on the one hand, he totally shook things up.
He did.
Like, you can't deny the trade deals, foreign policy, even just how presidents communicate. Like, he changed the game.
For sure.
But, and this is what I keep coming back to.
Oh, yeah.
Did he actually believe in any of the policies? Or was it all about, projecting this image of strength?
Winning.
No matter what.
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question.
It is, because even when you look at, like, his economic policies, there's this weird mix, right?
Right, yeah.
You've got these traditional conservative ideas.
Tax cuts.
Yeah, tax cuts, deregulation.
Sure.
But then also this very populist protectionist side.
Like with the tariffs.
Exactly, the tariffs. So it's almost like, was he trying to
appeal to everyone?
Yeah, like two very different groups at the same time.
Maybe he was, and that goes back to, the whole sociological angle.
Right.
Like, he was a master.
It's tapping into.
Yeah, that feeling of economic anxiety.
Right.
Like that the system was rigged.
Against the average person.
Yeah, that no one was looking out for them.
And he wasn't afraid to play on those fears.
No, was it?
Like, blaming job losses in manufacturing on unfair trade deals.
Or immigrants.
Right, even if, the economic reality was a lot
Yes.
more complicated.
Right, because it always is.
But it was a powerful narrative.
Very powerful.
Especially for folks who felt like, I don't know,
Yeah.
like they'd been left behind.
Or the economy.
By society.
By the world.
Yeah, and it's something that still resonates with a lot of people.
A lot of people.
Which is why it's so important to kind of unpack all these different pieces of who he was,
Absolutely.
Because whether you loved him or hated him,
Yeah.
he had a huge impact.
On everything.
On the country, on the world. Like, you can't deny that.
Absolutely not.
And this is where the psychology comes back in.
Okay.
Because I think we have to ask ourselves, what was driving him deep down,
What were his motivations?
Was it really this desire to make America great again?
Okay.
Or was it more about, I don't know,
what?
Personal ambition?
Like his ego?
Yeah, feeding that need for validation.
That's interesting.
Thinking about this whole personality thing.
Yeah.
It reminds me of this time I was at this conference.
Okay.
And the keynote speaker, he was this super successful CEO.
Right.
And he was talking about how he'd always been driven to win.
Like a competitive spirit.
Totally. Even as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And he said this thing, and it really stuck with me.
What did he say?
He said, I don't just want to play the game. I want to dominate it.
Wow, that's intense.
Right. And it made me think,
yeah.
How much of that drive is healthy?
Mm-hmm.
And how much of it becomes, I don't know.
What?
Something more Trumpian.
Yeah. Where do you draw the line?
Exactly. So we all have that will to power to some extent, don't we?
Oh, for sure.
It's just, in most of us, it's channeled into, I don't know.
Okay.
More everyday things, our careers, our relationships.
Right, wanting to be good at our hobbies.
Exactly. But for someone like Trump,
it was different.
It was operating on this whole other level.
He wanted to shape the world.
In his image.
Wow.
And you can see that in how he used language, how he talked about issues.
Okay.
It was always about winning.
Yeah.
About being the best.
He's crushing the competition.
Exactly.
That's a good point.
Remember that quote? The point is, you can never be too greedy.
Oh, yeah, that one.
Some people were shocked by that.
But it really sums up his whole approach.
Right.
It's like pursuing wealth wasn't just okay. It was morally good.
Almost like a duty.
Exactly. And it ties into this whole,
I don't know,
American mythology.
Yeah.
The self-made man.
The rugged individualist.
Who pulls himself up by his bootstraps.
And achieves unbelievable success.
Right. The American dream.
But it also ignores, all the systemic factors that contribute to success or failure.
Luck, privilege.
Exploitation,
That's
even.
Things we don't like to talk about.
So Trump was both a product of that myth and someone who, I don't know, exploited it.
Brilliantly.
Yeah, brilliantly.
That's why people are still so fascinated by him.
It's true, because it raises these really deep questions.
About what?
About American identity.
Okay.
About power, about success, about what it even means to be a winner.
And these aren't just abstract philosophical ideas. Yeah. They're playing out in the real world.
Yeah.
Shaping our politics, our economy.
Even our personal lives.
Yeah. So we have to pay attention.
We do.
Stay informed. Critically examine the narratives we're being fed.
And think for ourselves.
Absolutely.
Well said. So as we wrap up this part of the dive,
okay.
I just want to leave you with this thought.
Right.
When you think about Trump's impact on the world stage, did he strengthen America's position?
Okay.
Or did he weaken it?
And how will future generations judge his presidency?
Some heavy questions there.
They are.
And I think the answers depend on who you ask.
Absolutely.
Where they stand, what their values are.
Well, that's what makes it so interesting.
It is.
It's a conversation that can and should continue.
I agree. It's we've been, I don't know, peeling back the layers of an onion or something with this guy. The more you look, the more there is to think about,
Absolutely. And that's what makes him, I think, such a perfect subject for this kind of deep dive.
Yeah.
He's larger than life.
He is.
And he just defies easy categorization.
He does.
You can't put him in a box. And even though, he's been out of the spotlight for a bit now,
right,
you can still feel his influence.
Oh, yeah.
In, I don't know, the political landscape, the media.
Even just the way we talk about politics.
It's like he changed the language.
He did. And I think one of the most significant things he did was really brings certain issues to the forefront.
Like what?
things that had been simmering for years,
Okay.
economic inequality,
Right.
immigration, the decline of manufacturing, all that.
Yeah, he didn't create those problems,
Well,
but he definitely put them front and center.
and he did it in a way that really connected with people.
Even people who, disagreed with him.
Right. Even if they didn't agree with everything he said.
He had this way of, I don't know,
What?
cutting through the noise.
Yeah.
Speaking directly to people's, I guess, anxieties.
Their frustrations.
Yeah, like he understood them.
Like he was one of them.
Right. And remember that quote?
Which one?
I don't like losers.
Oh, yeah.
It sounds harsh.
Yeah.
But it gets at this belief that strength and dominance are what matters.
Like those are the most important qualities.
And for some people, that was really appealing.
I guess it's like this primal instinct, this
Yeah.
idea that the world is a jungle.
And only the strong survive.
Exactly.
And that's where, the philosophical stuff comes in.
Right.
You can trace that kind of thinking back to, I don't know.
Like Nietzsche.
Yeah. And
The will to power and all that.
so is Trump a Nietzschean figure.
I mean, in a way, yeah.
He definitely wasn't afraid to, I don't know.
Who challenged the rules.
Yeah, challenge the rules, break the norms, assert his dominance.
And whether you agreed with him or not,
Yeah.
I'll have to at least, I don't know.
Respect his audacity.
Yeah, I think so.
But audacity can be dangerous, right?
Oh, for sure.
It can lead to great things,
Mm-hmm.
but it can also lead to recklessness, even destruction.
And that's the paradox of Trump, isn't it?
It is.
Like he was brilliant. Insightful at times.
But also impulsive.
And, yeah, destructive.
And that's why I think he's so hard to pin down.
And so fascinating.
Because he's full of contradictions.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, I just
Okay.
want to leave you with a few final questions.
Right.
What do you think Trump's lasting legacy will be?
How will he be remembered?
As a transformative figure who shook things up?
Or a divisive figure who made things worse?
And how will future generations view his presidency?
I think those are questions we'll be wrestling with for a long time.
They are.
But that's the beauty of it, isn't it?
What's that?
The conversation keeps going.
It does.
There's always more to learn, more to explore.
And the more perspectives we consider,
Yeah,
the richer our understanding becomes.
so keep those minds open.
And don't be afraid to question your own assumptions.
That's what it's all about.
Well, that's all the time we have for today.
It went by fast.
It did. But thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It was my pleasure.
And we'll see you next time for another fascinating exploration.
Looking forward to it.